This time on STV, I'm storytelling here in the shop. Now we're going to start things off with a feature about my most favorite snowmobile class, the mid-size snowmobile class. And then after that, I'm going to be dreaming about a white winter because it's still not white outside. But then we're going to finish this show off with a story about the most extreme snowmobile race on the planet. And it's all going to start right after this. STV is brought to you by Yamaha, revs your heart. Ultimax belts, performance driven, performance proven. And by Polaris, think outside. The mid-size segment of snowmobiles is my favorite for a couple of reasons. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like performance snowmobiles, but the mid-size stuff reminds me of my youth, when I was just getting involved in snowmobiling and developing my passion for this sport, but also how the mid-size segment invites new riders and the youth into this next generation of snowmobilers. Here on STV, you've seen the first sled that I rode as a youngster, a 1980 Skidoo Citation, which is still in the family, still hauling kids around the backyard, and hopefully still creating future sledders. Now, the Citation wasn't that old when I started riding it back then, and was also pretty typical of the sleds that you'd find in the used market. Now, back then, those sleds were pretty simple mechanical devices and easy to keep running, and way smaller and less powerful than the sleds are today. Plus, the vintage thing, it hadn't really caught on yet, so there was plenty of sleds like this in the used market that a lot of us youngsters cut our teeth on. Simpler times maybe, but snowmobiling was again increasing in its popularity going into the early 90s to hit a high in 1997 of somewhere in the neighborhood north of 250,000 new units sold. Numbers that the industry hasn't seen since, but it should also be noted that this modern day high is still less than half the number of total sales from back in the early 70s, where some reports have sales numbers above 600,000 units. I've been heavily involved in snowmobiling since I was a kid, and from about 1998 and on, I've spent a good portion of my adult life making my living as part of the snowmobile media, so I've seen all of this. Now, those huge numbers of the mid-90s have been steadily decreasing since then, and we have had a bit of a bump recently, but last year there was only just over 130,000 units sold worldwide, which is still dismal compared to the numbers of the mid-90s. All of this has made attracting new riders to snowmobiling more difficult for the industry as a whole, which for a long time focused on performance as a force for sales and didn't spend much time developing the overall market. The first manufacturer to really look at this entry-level category was Skidoo with the introduction of their Freestyle. Now, admittedly, this thing was a bug-eyed, ugly duckling, but at least there was an attempt made by a manufacturer to focus on this category that would appeal to youth and new riders. More recently, Polaris remodeled an existing sled in their lineup, creating the Evo, which at the time was in a chassis similar to other models in the lineup, but lower to the ground and equipped with a shorter seat to accommodate smaller frames. In fact, this sled is still in the 2023 Polaris lineup as well, and is an extremely fun and good-looking sled to ride. Since the introduction of the Evo, there have been a couple of key snowmobiles into the entry-level category, starting with the creation of the 200cc class, which came out of the technological partnership between Arctic Cat and Yamaha. In 2018, the Yamaha Snow Scoot and the Arctic Cat ZR200s were introduced. With a chassis developed by Cat and a Yamaha engine sourced from a generator of all things, these sleds are SSCC certified, meaning they're trail legal and a significant step forward from the 120 class yard toys they share some common components with. However, the 200 class is decidedly dedicated towards youth, and even though they are trail legal, they are a little small and underpowered for a big day out on the trails. Not saying you can't ride them on the trails, I'm just saying be careful choosing the time and place. In model year 2020, we start to see the emergence of true mid-size snowmobiles with the appearance of the Arctic Cat Blast and the Yamaha Venom. These machines are built on true mid-size chassis with all the bells and whistles that you'd expect on quote-unquote full-size snowmobiles. Perhaps the most significant thing here is that these sleds are cool looking and not some detuned relic built on leftover parts bin components. This sled has been designed up to appeal for not only younger riders, but for adults as well who don't want to ride an intimidating 200 horsepower monster. With a goal of targeting this mid-sized consumer, I believe these sleds hit the bullseye right in the center. When riding these machines, you don't feel at all like you're on some sort of a compromise. What you will feel is a fun snowmobile that's easy to operate and not overwhelming at all to ride. It is built on a smaller chassis that suits smaller riders very well, but somehow it's not cramped feeling for adults approaching 6 feet. Plus, there's enough power out of the fuel-injected 397cc two-stroke engine to easily propel the sled to speeds past any posted trail limit with a very linear power delivery. This makes these sleds very friendly to ride for beginners just starting to develop their riding skills, but will also keep experienced riders entertained. For model year 2023, Skidoo has focused some of its power into this mid-size-ish category with the introduction of the Neo and Neo Plus models. These sleds are not built on a mid-size chassis like the 400s, but instead utilize the Gen 4 as the platform for these entry-level units. Skidoo is taking a similar approach as Polaris did with their Evos by downsizing an existing platform, but unlike the Evo, have included a much more modern 600 EFI two-stroke liquid Rotax engine rated at 40 horsepower in the standard Neo and 60 for the Plus models. Bottom line with either Neo is that they're both a fun, good-looking sled that will absolutely treat any rider from novice to expert to the experience of snowmobiling. Each of these sleds from the 4 manufacturers represent quality snowmobiles in this emerging mid-size class, even if they're not all built specifically on mid-size sleds. Now, these machines represent a true push by the industry to attract and keep new riders to the snowmobiling lifestyle. One bright spot is that the participation of snowmobiling remains strong when you look at the number of snowmobiles registered to go on the snow, meaning that even though new sled sales aren't as strong as they could be, the snowmobile life cycle is definitely getting longer. Back in the day, most people would buy a new sled every year or every 2 years. Now, those same folks are holding on to the sleds maybe 2, 3, or 4 years before they replace them. The question remains to be answered. Will these mid-sized sleds feed into creating and sustaining the snowmobiling population? Or, in 30 years, if there is recreational snowmobiling anymore, will these mid-sized sleds be looked upon like Goldmember here, as a valiant effort by the manufacturers to invite new people into snowmobiling, but ultimately a bit of a failure? Time will tell. But I think this class will be one of the reasons we will have a strong snowmobiling community well into the future, and that is my favorite thing about this class of snowmobiles. At least the new stuff isn't brown and gold. Coming up after the break, I'm dreaming about where I can ride this winter. This segment is brought to you by Best Western Hotels and Resorts. So I'm here in the shop. It's early January and we just got flushed out here in Ontario. Practically all the trails have gone red. The few that were turning yellow and green are almost all gone now. Even up north, things aren't looking great. Why do I put myself through this every year? I mean, I've spent all this money to go ride. I bought the passes. I got the sled ready. I'm ready. And there's just no place to go. Why? Why do I do this to myself? Maybe I'll look on the internet for something. Where's the nearest snow? Where would I go? New Brunswick was good in the past. I've already gotten a text from Ross about the great conditions there. That's not too bad. I would definitely go back to the Atlantic Coast. That place is awesome, with trails right off the back of the property, and they get me out to Piston Alley and over to Serpentine Lodge. Now that's one of my favorite trails anywhere, and I get to see Butch too. That's a pretty good option. Now that's in Bathurst though. Closer to me would be Grey Rocks in Edmonton. That place is super friendly to snowmobilers as well, and we get to ride into the Christmas Mountains from there too. Mount Carlton Park is one of the nicest places I can remember going to ride sleds. Now, New Brunswick always delivers a great snowmobile experience. A bit of a drive though. Not too bad, 8 or 9 hours and I'm there. I wonder what things are like in the Chickshawks. Now I could go out and ride with Jonathan at Adventure Chick-Shock again and ride with those guys. And it's just like riding in the mountains. They got great conditions up there, and they're located right in the middle of the Gaspé region of Quebec. It's beautiful there. I bet the trails are pretty good around there too if we wanted to ride both on and off. Now the crew at Adventure Chick-Shocks, I mean, those guys make the ride extra fun when you go there. They're a good group, and they can take a rider to all the good spots that they know of in the hills. Hey, they even have rentals as well if I think about it. All we got to do is get there. I do like the idea of mountains. What other places are there to ride both on and off trails? Oh, wait a second. I know. West Yellowstone is like that. They have an excellent trail system groomed right up into the alpine on the top of Turtle, and that's where those ghost trees are. They're nice to see. And I can get there on a trail sled if I wanted, as long as the snow is a little bit packed down. Or you can, of course, rent a mountain sled if you wanted. And they have all those great off-trail pockets you can ride. You can do everything there. Plus, the town is a pretty cool place to experience as well. Experience. Where have I been with a great experience? Oh, wait a second. I got it. Grizzly Lodge. That place is all mountains. Even the lodge is in the mountains there, with some of the best technical riding in BC is basically right off the back deck. That would be a good option to go to for sure. And the accommodations and food are as good as the riding there, yeah. And they got sleds to rent, snow bikes too. I could definitely go for a tour back to Grizzly. Adam and his team are always working to make Grizzly better and better. I've got some great memories of that place, and it would definitely be up to make a few more. But that's a flight. I need somewhere closer. Now, Quebec is just across the river from where I'm at. What's it like there, I wonder? Chibougamau, Mont Laurier, Rouen, Noranda, there's just so many places to ride in Quebec, and they're all so good too. There's just something about snowmobiling in the province of Quebec that is different. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the food or the unique accommodations, or maybe it's the people who make that place so special, but every time I ride there, I'm reminded of how good it is. Yeah, I could definitely haul sleds over there, but well, where can I ride here in Ontario? Let me check the map. Cochrane is looking pretty good. That's always a fun place. And they got that vintage museum with some pretty cool old sleds, even Big Al, and that's a buggy to see. Oh, and then the polar bear habitat's there too. Yeah, I mean, I miss seeing those bears going up to Churchill, and what else? Oh yeah, they got JR's. JR's is in Cochrane. I could definitely go for a feed of ribs. Sudbury looks like it's coming online too, and that's one of the closest places for me to get to right now, and I could definitely spend another night or two at the Sportsman's Lodge. That place does a great job of making memories, and the trails out of the lodge there are excellent too. We can do some big rides or short loops or head into town and then get some good home-style meals back at the Sportsman before we get into the cold snacks for the evening. I'm just getting hungry thinking about it. That's it, stomach rules. I'm done sitting around here just wasting my time crying about snow conditions. Snowmobiling is just too darn good to sit around waiting for the snow to come to me. I'm going to it. I'm calling the guys right now, and we're going. Hey, Billy. Yeah, it's me. Yeah. Hey, I need you to call in dead to work tomorrow. Yeah, we're going snowmobiling. Where? It doesn't matter where. We'll figure that out when we get the sleds loaded on the trailer. I don't care. I don't care where we're going. Conditions are good somewhere. We're going to the conditions. Yeah, perfect. All right, we'll see you here. Oh man, snowmobiling is so good. Can't wait to go. This is gonna be great. Coming up after the break, we're talking about the Cain's Quest endurance race. What's that? Well, stick around and find out. This segment is brought to you by CKX. There's all kinds of snowmobile racing out there. I mean, you've got hill climb, you've got snowcross, you've got ice ovals, you've got radar runs. Basically, anytime you get 2 or more sleds in one place, a snowmobile race can break out. I think it's just something baked into the DNA of us snowmobilers. But there's one race that stands out above them all, and that's Cain's Quest, which takes place in Labrador. Think Dakar Rally meets snowmobiling. Cain's quest takes its name from the explorer Jacques Cartier, who referred to Labrador as the land God gave to Cain. This wasn't a compliment for this harsh and rugged landscape assessed by Cartier, but this land would become the perfect territory to test man and machine in an ultimate race of endurance and skill for the teams who attempt this adventure. Cain's quest only occurs once every 2 years, with the next race scheduled to start at 10 a.m. sharp local time, Saturday, March 4th, 2023 in Lab City. From that beginning, over 35 teams of 2 riders each will depart every minute until the last team leaves on their quest. Ahead of the riders lay a course taking them to almost every corner of Labrador, totaling over 3,500 kilometers in distance. This test of endurance isn't laid out on flat groomed trails either. This race takes place cross-country through terrain chosen by the individual teams, not the organizers. Now, this is a timed event, with the wind going to the team of riders to complete the circuit the fastest, but there will be 18 consecutive checkpoints that must be crossed by the teams in order for them to score their times. Some of these checkpoints are quick in and out stops for the riders, while others have mandatory layover times for teams to rest and recuperate before the next leg of the race. Now, the terrain here is capable of breaking both man and machine as the teams push themselves day and night to reach the checkpoint goals. Just finishing Cain's quest is an achievement not every team completes, and for those that do make the distance, it can take up to 6 days for them to reach the finish line. Now, some of that time will be spent in the mandatory layovers in the communities along the way, in a warm bed if they're lucky, but it's not uncommon due to breakdowns or extreme weather for teams to have to spend a night out on the land with only themselves to rely on until help arrives. Adding to the complexity of the event is the ever-changing Labrador environment. Teams must not only be able to cope with navigating through this remote wilderness, but also deal with snow that can range from concrete-like wind-blown conditions that break snowmobiles to bottomless powder that's practically impossible to move through. Then you have the weather that can range from sunny, spring-like conditions that are above freezing to all-out gales that reduce visibility to almost nothing and bite at the competitors with temperatures down into the -40s. Luck does play a part for competitors to take on this challenge, but they have to be ready for anything. Sleds must be evaluated by tech officials to ensure they're equipped properly for emergency situations, but competitors can also be found carrying extra gas, overnight gear, and snowshoes along with tools and spare parts. The unknown can be dangerous on this quest, and that's why there's 2 riders and 2 sleds on each team, which does add complexity to the race, but also an extra measure of safety with 2 team members traveling together. There's also many support members of these teams in the background, keeping the riders and machines going, but the 2 people who start the race must finish the race, and supporting teammates are limited as to what they can do for these riders. Cain's quest is a true test of the will of the riders and their skill to cope with the inevitable challenges they will be met with along the way. For this year, you can follow the race and your favorite team online through real-time GPS tracking data. Head to the Cain's Quest website, where you can follow the live tracking or download the Yellow Brick app for your Android or iOS device. If there is a more difficult racing challenge in the snowmobile world, I don't know of it. Cain's Quest is simply in a league of its own when it comes to challenging the environment against distance and the clock. Coming up after the break, we're going to check in with Chris to get the latest on this year's edition of Cain's Quest. This segment is brought to you by Polaris. So with the distance between us, we're going to use Zoom to connect to Chris, who's one of the organizers up in Labrador City for Cain's Quest. So Chris, why don't you talk to me a little bit about how plans are coming for this year's Cain's Quest race?
So far, plans are coming along quite well. We were off to a rough start, as anyone can imagine with COVID. We lost a year there. We had to postpone. And because of that, and because we couldn't have meetings and couldn't meet in person and stuff, and trying to get used to this virtual meetings like we're having right now, it took a bit to get used to and get our feet wet, but we got it. And plans are coming well underway. The next things are really just starting to plan the in-town events to the details now to make sure when the races arrive that we're ready for everything that comes, because when March, well, actually, I think it's February 27th when that hits, the town goes mad because everybody comes in a hurry. So we're just concluding those final details, and the town is hyped. All our communities are hyped. Over 500 volunteers are getting on the go. It's really, really madness around this area now, this whole region of Labrador.
Now, this isn't the first Cain's Quest. You guys have done this on a number of years before this. It goes back over 15 years ago, I think was the first race now. Do you anticipate a successful event for the 2023 edition of the Cain's Quest race?
I do, yeah. I anticipate a very successful race. Our staff that we have hired on are very, very good and diligent in making sure that they're doing the right things at the right times. Our board of directors is very good and diligent, and one thing we wouldn't be able to do without is the volunteers. Like I said earlier, it takes over 500 people to put this race off, and it's all parts of Labrador. But the best thing about this race is it brings Labrador, as huge as we are, it brings us together as one, like we're together. And I don't suspect there to be any major issues, and I suspect this race to go off as flawless as ever.
That's awesome. I mean, we're going to be watching from our end here in Ontario or wherever we happen to be with Snowmobiler television, but I'm excited to see how things play out for the race, as I'm sure you're excited about that too. So thanks very much for joining me today. We just had a couple of questions to go over, but it sounds like things are going to be an awesome race this year for Cain's Quest.
Yeah, I can't wait. 2023 is going to be exciting. Thanks so much for being interested in us and previewing us on your show.
Perfect. Love it.
Thanks for tuning into this edition of Snowmobiler Television. Until next week, keep the rubber side down. Closed captioning is brought to you by Yamaha. STV has been brought to you by CKX, Wear Your Passion. Best Western Hotels and Resorts, Ready to Get Away, and by On Snow Magazine, for snowmobilers from snowmobilers.